Well, welcome back to another episode of the Industrial Real Estate Show. I am pleased to be joined by Chris Matin, who's restoring a 105-year-old factory in Illinois that's been abandoned for a while. And I think the coolest part about this is I found Chris on YouTube on a video that he just recently did, and it is fascinating, the project that he's undertaking and the challenges that are coming along with it, and support of a bunch of people that are really helping with this project. I'm really excited to ask Chris a bunch of questions. Chris, first of all, thanks so much for agreeing to join me on this.
Well, that's a pretty great introduction. I'm going to do my best to live up to it.
Well,
great to be here.
Your channel is awesome. I just came across it by that last video that you did. And I know you've been toiling on this project and on the YouTube for a while leading up to it. But that one video was certainly a breakout video. And I'll put links to it so people can watch that video, hopefully after they get to hear your interview. But give me some backstory on this. So actually, perhaps let me set it up a little bit, and then you can tell me, you can fill in some gaps. Charleston, Illinois, central Illinois, not as far as, like, I looked into it a little bit, smaller community, 17,000 people, give or take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Most of the year, you can't see anything in any direction because it's just cornfields. So I was driving between cornfields.
And did you grow up there? Is that your hometown?
Yeah, that was my hometown. That was where I was born. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you saw this factory then. It was a former shoe factory, Brown's Shoe Factory. How long has it been abandoned for?
Well, it was in probate when I bought it. The previous owner had passed away, and I think it was probably about 10 years in probate, and they were ready to sell it when they saw me coming a mile away. And when I got there, because I noticed the sign out front, so I called the realtor, and she said it was 30,000. I'm like, wow, that's a gigantic building. It's got 66,000 square feet and 3 acres on it, right in the middle of town. And I thought, that's a pretty neat price. I don't know what condition the building is in, but I'm gonna go check it out. And then when she showed up, the first thing she said was, "Good news, it dropped to 20,000." So I was hooked. I didn't have a chance. I knew I was buying it right at that moment. So
you're right. 66,000 square feet on 3 acres, right in the middle of town, for $20,000. That does almost seem like an irresistible price.
Yeah.
Now, people that haven't watched your video yet will say, yeah, that seems like a great deal, but there's a fair amount of hair that came with this, most notably all the garbage, all the debris in there. And then as you start probably peeling back the onion, and I've watched a number of your videos, so I've seen some of these issues now. You start uncovering structural issues and chaos. It just looks like absolute chaos. So take me back. You get the keys, you buy the property, $20,000, and you open the door on the first day. What does that first day look like when you're the proud owner of the building?
Well, I'd had a tour of it, and I was like, does all this stuff come with it? Because the second and the third floor are just like, they're really open. There's no walls in there, just the external walls. And there was just thin pathways that you could walk. The building's like 400 feet long. And so if that gives you any idea of how much stuff was in there. And I was like, does all this stuff come with it? And she's like, yeah, it all goes with it as a selling point. And I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. Because I looked around and I could see like cool industrial furniture stuff in there, just piled with who knows what, to floor to ceiling. And as it's turned out, it's been much more of a liability having all that stuff. It was a fire load, and dumpsters are like, over $600 each. And probably, I don't think with 100 dumpsters that would have even done it, 30-yard dumpsters. So it's been pretty chaotic. And we had a sale, like it was just like maybe a month and a half after we bought it, just to try to get some of our money back. And we more than made the money back on the purchase price from the stuff that was in the building on that weekend sale. So technically it was a free building.
So do you have all the garbage cleaned out now, or where's that at?
I'm at about 70% right at the moment. So I still got another 30% to do, and it's taken me 2 years. So I live overseas in Poland, and I have a new baby. So I'm able to go intermittently. I'll fly, and then I'll work for between 3 weeks to a month in Charleston, and then I'll fly back for like 6 or 7 or 8 weeks. And it's kind of hard when you have a new baby. He's actually 2 right now, but the interesting thing is that I actually get more time with him than I would if I was working a 9 to 5. So during my time in Poland, we're together all the time. So yeah.
So when you're back stateside, are you at the factory nonstop?
Yeah, daylight till it's too dark. Yeah, every day.
And there's
dirty.
more.
It's dirty. Yeah, I mean, there's like 30 years of dust settled. It wasn't a manufacturing. It was a manufacturing plant, but they didn't manufacture anything. They were an assembly plant, so they would have leather and stuff for the shoes. And the Brown Shoe Company basically had these buildings all over the Midwest because they would make deals with these little towns where, hey, we're a mass producer. We'll come to your town and we'll set up this factory and employ all of your people, but we want these tax incentives. And by the way, you guys have to pay to build the building. So these towns all paid to build these buildings, and then Brown Shoe Company would hire the employees, basically everybody in the town. It was the only non-agrarian employer for probably 3 or 4 towns out of 10 towns around Charleston. 3 or 4 of them have these buildings in them. So, yeah.
When did they stop operating out of that building?
I think it was, I don't know the exact date, but I think it was around 1979, 1980. And then it was, for a short while, they had like a school in there, and they had a furniture manufacturer in there. And they've had a few businesses coming and going, but then the previous owner had an HVAC, plumbing and heating company that he ran out of the front end. And he, to use maybe a diplomatic word, he was a real fan of auctions. So he spent the 80s and 90s just filling the building. And I don't know how he did it, because indiscriminately taking stuff out of the building, it took me 2 years. So I have no idea how he got all that in there. Dedication.
So that's impressive. Yeah. Well, I mean, when people get a hobby, some people just go all in, right? So
Right.
if that was the guy's hobby, he might have just been doing it day and night, and that's just what he did. Well, likewise. Well, you definitely are, because I could tell that how much you're putting into it. So outside of all the stuff that you've had to haul out, what have you uncovered with a building that's 106 years old now, that you might not have expected? And maybe there's things that you did expect, but that beyond like the bones of it.
Side, because I'm kind of an optimist, but I love old industrial stuff. Just love it. Like stuff from 30s and 40s, which was kind of like the height right before mass production started. And all of the industrial elements in buildings like this are incredible. So if you take like a heater out of the ceiling, even the brackets that hold that heater up, they can weigh like 7, 8, 10 pounds. And you're not going to find that today, right? There was a dust collector out that I was taking off the building, and all of the pulleys and mechanisms still, I just barely apply a little pressure, and they move freely. So they made stuff to last. And they had a real sense of like craftsmanship, and things just look cool too. So one of the best things has been just walking through the building, pulling out elements and thinking like, well, this is never going to be a heater again, but I can take the back off of this where the fan mounted. It's got a perfect place to put a mirror in it, and it's going to look amazing. So a lot of the things that I'm going to be using in the renovation and in kind of setting up the decor inside of the building are going to be, right out of the building. So that has been really awesome. In terms of kind of the negative things that I hadn't seen, I knew I was going to be getting into a lot of work. I just didn't realize that this project is really about dedicating your entire life to it. So I don't have a lot of money to just bring in big crews and get everything done. I purchased it on a whim, but I've persevered, and I've made a ton of progress and made a lot of connections. And one thing that I probably would say very pleasantly surprised me was that the city has really been kind to me. Um, a lot of people have terrible things to say about, their local municipality, but in Charleston, well, I guess I should step back and say that whenever I ask them about something, they don't make things difficult. It's just black and white. This is legal. This is not. Do this and you'll be okay. Right. And in a way, that's kind of a blessing because, first of all, it tells me the direction that I need to go. But secondly, they're not like everybody knows they can come in and make problems if they want to. Right. But everybody in this town, their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, they all worked at this building. So a lot of people are rooting for me. And most of them are elected officials. So I think that's kind of worked to my benefit. But it's been really nice. In terms of surprises, there was in the back end of the building, there's some structural beams that looked okay when I purchased it, but then like a chunk fell out of them and you could see like the entire thing was rotted out. And it's scary for somebody like me who has zero experience to try to cope with something like that. But fortunately, I've had a lot of mentors kind of reach out and help me, and they're helping me get through it. So it's a surprise every day. Every single day, I see something about that building that I've never noticed before. So every day is an adventure.
It's so cool to hear that the community and the government is behind you on this because, as you said, there's probably so many memories with a building like that, and it's an iconic building in your town, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Does it have any historical designations, or has it been deemed to be a historical site by anyone?
No, I put a lot of thought into that because it does qualify. I could get it on the National Registry of Historic Buildings, and that would qualify me for various grants. Because without being on that registry, the only grants that I've found that are really helpful are a couple $5,000 grants. One is for a feasibility study for business in there. And the other is for like a structural engineering assessment, which wouldn't really cover the cost because those are probably start around $7,000 and up just for like the exterior shell and, those basics. So I really was thinking I could use some grants and this is a perfect candidate for it. But the problem is that fixing it for as, in the most economic ways possible, once you're on one of those registries, they have certain conditions. For example, like you're not even allowed to wash brick with a power washer. You have to use matching brick. You have to use lime-based mortar for the bricks with natural sand, not modern sand. You can't do this floor. It has to be real hardwood in here. It can't be, stained concrete. So that would just be a killer for me. So I put a lot of thought and research into it, but in the end, it seems like it would work against me more than it would work for me. So.
Is the building currently at code? Could you start renting it out right now?
No. As a matter of fact, so we had really an incredible event happened. There was another brown shoe down south a little bit, I think like an hour south, and it burned down from arson. And then about a year after I bought the building, I just left the building, drove home, and I got a phone call and says, "Hey, your building's on fire." So I came back, rushed back, and there were fire trucks everywhere, and they were pumping water into the building. And what had happened was somebody just threw like a Molotov cocktail through the window, and I have no idea why. But there are these hardwood floors everywhere in the building, right? And the fire suppression doesn't work anymore. And they picked a window that went directly into the bathrooms. And the bathrooms have concrete floors and concrete ceilings and subway tile walls and drains in the floor. So nothing caught on. I mean, there was a bunch of stuff that the guy had brought into the building that caught on fire, and all that stuff was burning. Smoke was rolling out, and I thought the whole building was going down, but it was all contained in that concrete pillbox. And then when they sprayed water, because there were drains in there, it just went down. So there was absolutely zero damage to the building except for the broken window and the door that they pried open to get in to fight the fire. So I got really, really lucky. Yeah.
So what do you need to do to bring that up to, and I know you mentioned in another video, you're going to do it in stages, to
Yeah.
have one part start trying to get some revenue coming into there, which you can then use to divert to fixing up the rest. So what does that look like? How do you bring this online in stages?
So the lower front area, there's like a little kind of jutting out area that was a later addition in the 1950s to the building. And the original building has 17 inch thick brick walls. And this is like sticking out from that. And it's a later addition. So the city, when they came out, they just offered me some helpful advice. They said, hey, look, that's an external wall. That's pretty much a firewall right there. So, and the rule for firewalls are they have to go from the floor and go all the way up and pass through the roof. And then what that does is it legally separates it into two different properties. So if it was one property, I have to do all the fire suppression all or nothing at once. But because it becomes its own legal building in the front, I have to go in and put firewalls in the windows from the original exterior walls, which are now interior walls. And then any doorways I have to firewall off and really separate it. But at that point, I've got a 4,000 square foot area. And fire suppression, I think, is between $2 and $3 per square foot. So now we're talking about a much more affordable option. And so I've strategized around the building where I can put up firewalls to do section by section. And then as I go, I'll take back the firewall from the previous section. So it'll just start growing. And that's the only way that I can accomplish that. So, and then I decided what we're going to do is in that space, we're going to go for, because they're like really large open rooms. Everything in the building is big and open. But we're going to do venue rental because, first of all, it's a way that the maximum number of people can get in and enjoy the building. Secondly, in Charleston, the population of Charleston is like 17,000. It used to be like almost 30. So for the last decade, it's just been shrinking and shrinking. And renting it out as a retail space could maybe get couple $1,000 per month. But as a venue rental, we're kind of centrally located between St. Louis, Indianapolis, and Chicago, equidistant. And there are a few other kind of more metropolitan cities within an hour's drive. And so as a venue rental space, you can make the same in a single night as you could for renting out for a month to a retailer. And with a venue space, you could do, potentially 6-7 weddings a month or something, or 6 or 7 events per month. And so the shovel that you're generating money with is a lot bigger. So that's kind of the hope. We're going to get that area done first, and then, pick another 10,000 square feet. The only challenge is I can't do a section only on the bottom floor, because that firewall has to go all the way up. So it's all 3 floors every time. So that's kind of the challenge, but yeah.
What are you planning for the second and third floor?
I don't know yet. One thing that occurred to me is so the main bulk of the building is like a 400-foot straight, basically monolith, in a line, 50 foot wide by 400 feet long. And then it's got a giant annex as well. In one end, I was thinking, because of the fire suppression challenge and the square and how they base it on the square footage, and the fact that the old hardwood floors are basically turn this thing into a tinderbox. What I would really love to do is get a structural engineering assessment and remove the second and third floor and open it up to just a giant cavernous area for weddings. So they may say you have to leave a floor joint. They may say that, you can't do it at all because the building could cave in or whatever. But those brick walls are 17 inches thick. So they're 4 bricks thick. And remarkably, they're in pretty good condition with the exception of a few areas. So there's that. And then in the back, I want to do an antique showroom. So I live, like we said earlier, most of the time in Poland. And for years, I've been trying to work toward a goal of eventually being able to kind of go into all the old factories here. So Poland was occupied by Soviets, and they were basically turned into just like a manufacturing house, right? And everything would get sucked into the Soviet Union. And some people do, but most people don't have fond memories of those times, and they're more forward thinking, and they don't have the same appreciation for old stuff as we do. So like when you're looking for cool antique stuff in the States, there's a lot of competition. Anytime something pops up that's cool on Facebook Marketplace, it's gone. But over here, people, they care more about like IKEA and having, comfort and that stuff. So there's just a lot more availability and a lot better pricing to pick up cool stuff. So my thinking was to just start going into these buildings and get like old cafeteria tables, workbenches, stools, clocks off the wall, all the really cool old industrial lighting, and just start sending that in shipping containers over to the States. And that was one of the reasons I got hooked on the building, was because when I walked in, I'm like, this has to be the most incredible place ever to send your stuff. I mean, just the building alone would sell the stuff in it, like if you walked in there. So
that'd be much more appropriate than having that type of old heritage furniture in a modern retail store where they don't jive together. But if you have a desk that's 100 years old in a factory that's 100 years old, that's a pretty cool experience where you're going to get that real sense of that item in the environment. So that'd be very cool.
The sum of the presentation altogether, like, it doubles the value of it, really. Just because you walk in, you're like, whoa, this stuff is awesome. And you can't, it's unavoidable. So
it takes a lot of support to get something like this going. And I know you've had a lot of people that have volunteered time to help. Can you share a couple of examples of people that have been helpful in getting the project to where it is today?
Sure. I'm not a big social media guy, but I had posted some stuff, and I mentioned that I needed a power washer to power wash those bricks that I wasn't supposed to be washing. And a guy down in St. Louis just saw it, and then he was driving down the road and he saw a power washer sitting. He's like, well, it's either the carburetor or it's the seals or whatever on it, but it can't be both. Maybe I can fix that. He pulled it up, brought it in, fixed it, and gave me a call. And he was like, hey, I know you don't know me, but I got something for you. Is it okay if I come and talk to you? And I was like, yep, come on up. We'll see. I like stuff. So he came up and we made fast friends. And from that time on, he's been traveling. Basically, every time I come back to the building, he comes up for the whole 3 weeks and helps me out in the building. So he is a jack of all trades. And I'm 50. He's pushing 70. I think he's 68. And he has so much worldly experience, and he's really been like a mentor for me. You don't expect that to kind of come into your life after 50, but he did. And it's really been amazing. He lives in St. Louis. He doesn't have a place for a workshop, and in his retirement, he wants to be doing stuff. And this is a perfect opportunity to get away and do something that's a part of a big, awesome project. And so he's been super generous with his time and his mentoring. And then there was a guy named Neil who was basically an electrician who knows everything under the sun about electric. And he saw that I was working on this 1919 antique elevator that was just a hot mess. So when the building was in probate, this is rumor, speculation, so I want to preface it with that. One of the family members had sabotaged the elevator and broke a key off in a fork truck that came with the building, just to keep people from getting stuff out of the building. They were warring between each other. And so a lot of damage had been done. Wires had been cut in like sneaky places, like under the elevator car or whatever. So we had our work cut out for us. And he's in his 80s. I didn't think we were going to get him into the elevator shaft, and it was super hot in there. So I spent 2 days putting plastic and styrofoam up there and bringing a couple Amazon air conditioners up there just because it is super hot up there. But we got him up there, and lo and behold, all of the individual components still work. The only thing that we've got to do now is just figure out the the electrical stuff, because the elevator has a slow start, which so it doesn't jerk when it starts, and it's a little bit more complicated. So we're trying to figure that part out. We contacted the original elevator manufacturer that is still in business today, and they sent us the original wiring diagram. So that was pretty cool. And I guess, honestly, I haven't really paid anybody the entire time I've had this. People have just been, volunteering. And I think mostly the biggest benefit is having all the stuff in the building, because people are so interested to get in and see it and pick through it and find something cool. And what I end up doing is like, hey, you want to come help me with this? And then before they leave, I'm like, you want go pick something out, help a guy out, get it out of here. And that has worked really well for me. So I've had a lot of volunteer going on. Yeah.
That is very cool. So what does the next year, like, or I should say upcoming year, what does 2025 look like in terms of what you want to accomplish in the building?
Well, so you mentioned that I have the YouTube channel, recently had quite a bit of success, and it's really got me in an optimistic place. YouTube is pretty powerful in terms of the opportunities it can create for you. If the algorithm shows you a little love, a lot of positive things can come your way. And we had a video that did really well, went viral, and it's about 800,000 views at the moment. And I was telling you before we started that I like to watch some of the old renovation channels where people get a chateau in France or Portugal or somewhere. And in the early days of their channel, they're always on a shoestring budget. They're struggling. They're trying to get something fixed. And basically, I can relate to that because it's my situation. But 2-3 years down the road, when they've got 1 million subscribers, they're doing these massive projects. And I always wondered, is that YouTube that's facilitating that? And with my experience on this one video that had so much, trending success, is that's the key to what they're doing. Because I had professional tradesmen reach out to me, say, hey, I want to volunteer some time, bricklayers, electricians, roofers. Even one company reached out and said, hey, we have this new technology, this parametric robotics, and we can manufacture your beams for you that you need replaced in the back. And I said, let's have a call. And so I'm talking with them at the moment. And yeah, it's been pretty awesome. So when I look forward to the year ahead, I really don't know where it's going to go. I do know that I'm going to get to blank canvas stage for the first time since I've owned the building, which is like cleaned out, things not in the way, and then I can pick one project at a time, and just go attack it and start knocking dominoes down. So if I can just get to that stage, I think it'll be a famous success.
Yeah, and big congrats on the success that you've had on the YouTube, because I know you've been doing this for a couple of years, and I didn't discover your channel until that one video. Mm-hmm. And then having to go back and watch some of your other videos, nothing's changed except that one video just caught the algorithm and it caught fire. And there's a great summary of everything that you've done.
I had been hovering around 8,500 subscribers, because all it is just an old building, right, that somebody's fixing. And but I had some really positive things come. Bob came into my life, Neil came into my life, and I was like, I need to lean into that. And so I decided what I'm going to do is start treating it with the respect it deserves. And you have to try to make the episodes into stories, and that's what I did, and it worked. It really worked right out of the gate. So hopefully I'll be able to continue that. I learned a lot from that experience, and I'm going to try to, roll on with it and keep the momentum going.
Well, like you said, it really is a great story. Not just that one video that you did, but the story of taking a factory, 100-plus-year-old factory that was abandoned and filled with garbage and clutter, and actually it was a liability because you had to remove it all, and restoring a factory like that isn't something that the average person undertakes. And there's actually very few people do. And that was actually one question I meant to ask you earlier. If nobody bought this, what happened with that building? Would it eventually just be demolished, or what do they do?
I have some videos about that, because there was another brown shoe 11 miles away in a neighboring town called Mattoon, which was even bigger than this building. And it started falling down, and the city it needed a new roof, but other than that, probably could have been saved. Now it's too far gone, but the city auctioned it for like 3,000. It ended up going for $3,000. And
Mm.
I needed new beams and I bought it. But what happened was I bought it from the guy who got it at the auction. He went in and like cut a bunch of wood out and skipped town, didn't pay the property taxes. And there were like $9,000 in back taxes. The property tax on my building is only $1,200 a month. And I'm in an enterprise zone, which is like a development classification in Illinois, where if you're restoring a property, you can get property tax increases frozen. So as you make improvements, they won't raise. And you also get no sales tax, 9% no sales tax on any money that you spend on restoring the building. So and it's just a matter of an application if your building is within that zone. So I was like, you know what? The city wants this thing knocked down. And it's got, these are like old world timbers inside the building, tight grain wood, Douglas fir, over 100,000 feet of hardwood flooring that's like bird's eye maple, which is like one of the most expensive, hardwood floor materials. I needed all the window sills for my building. There were just so many things, and all I had to do was like basically buy it and knock it down. I don't have any experience with that, but I went and asked how much it would rent for an excavator, and I was going to just find a union guy and try to hire him to work on weekends and knock it down for me. But after we sent the check, and he sent us all the paperwork for the quitclaim deed, and they went in and said, this name doesn't match. And it was spelled just a little bit differently. And in retrospect, we think that he knew what he was going to do and didn't want it hitting his credit. And so he just bought it with, just a little bit off on his name. And I panicked. And so I called him. It was like 6 hours after I just paid him, and he wasn't answering the phone all of a sudden. And so I ran to the bank and put a stop on the check. It was like it was also like $20,000. So I can't even remember. I think it was 20,000. And they said, well, we don't know. We're going to try. And they did. And we ended up getting the money back. And then he called me. And, but then it was kind of like, no, too many red flags. And then it ended up going back to the city. And I was in Poland. I didn't know that. I just knew that the county trustee had it and somebody else bought it. And so I've met with her, and I've been like begging for the chance just to get salvage rights from it. But it's fallen down a lot more since then. And she's worried about the liability, and she doesn't want me to go in for that reason. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk my way in or not. But yeah. And then once again, I've digressed a little bit. I tend to talk too much.
Oh, no. It's a fascinating story.
It was about the buildings around, right?
Well, what would have happened to this one in Charleston if you hadn't bought it?
So it was a nightmare for Mattoon, and Mattoon and Charleston are so close together. Charleston did not want that happening to their building, right? They also didn't want somebody to come in and just start like parking junk cars in there or whatever. I don't think I can't imagine anybody else would have done what I'm doing. Looking back, I just can't imagine it, right?
Me neither.
And so I think it was destined to be bulldozed, which would have been tragic. Maybe somebody would have come in and knocked off the top 2 floors and kept the bottom floor and then just put like a metal roof across it or something. That could have been maybe something that would happen, but probably it was right at that moment where it's now or never. Can this building be saved or not? And another year, 2 years, because I've done a lot to kind of correct any leaks and stuff like that. It's a constant battle. But if that stuff had continued the way it was when I first got it, all the guts of the building are hardwood. So water, really quickly destroys everything.
Oh, it finds a way. It always finds a way.
Yeah.
How close are you time-wise to getting that first part open where you can start renting out for venues or different types of things?
I have a secret goal of like thinking, I don't want to say done, but I would say really close to being done in 2025 for that area. The things that need to happen are I need to get fire suppression installed I need to get up to fire code. I have a slogan that the building provides, because so much stuff was in there. Basically, the materials we need to fix the building we can find somewhere in the building. The previous owner wanted to do an apartment in there, and he ran the sewer line. So just on the other side of the wall where I want to put the bathrooms is an access to the sewer line. So that, saved who knows how many thousands of dollars. The city kind of laughed at me when I said I wanted to put 3-phase in for the elevator, because they said we can't even get the parts 2 years out for some of, for the 3-phase stuff. And we found that the building still had a live hookup of 3-phase. So that was pretty awesome. So I need to get the electric done and install the bathrooms, fire suppression. Oh, I need to, do the last little elements on the fire wall, close the gaps and doorways and stuff. And then I need to do the floors, and I want to mount on so there's like all the old shoe things operated on pulleys and stuff. So there's different pulleys and stuff. I'm trying to get around the building. I want to put them up in the ceiling and just really do as much as I can to kind of honor the industrial heritage of the building for the venue space. And I just got to make it look nice. So I think making it look nice is probably 2026. Making it up to code, I hope I can do by the end of 2025. So.
Well, what I find so cool about YouTube, and it's not available anywhere else, is that you can follow along with the storyline. And I bet that there's people that have followed along with you from very early days that became so attracted to the idea of, here's a massive project, and it's not going to be done in a weekend. This isn't a 3-episode show. This is going to be a multi-year project, and we're just going to document the steps that happen in real time. It's not scripted. That loose, unscripted, unpredictable. It's the antithesis of reality TV, I guess, is a good way of describing it, where those are all scripted and there's a predetermined outcome. This, you're just discovering things as you go, which is so cool.
The premise is kind of absurd, because it's like no money and no skills. So, but it's been a really cool growing experience. I've had, to your point, I've had more than one person reach out and say, I love this story. I hope I live long enough to see the end of it. So, because when I look at my YouTube analytics, 30% are over 55, 30% are over 65, and 30% are over 75. There's almost nobody under that age group. So these are all, which is why kind of the ad revenue that I get from the videos is pretty cool, because those are the people who've made their money in life, right? And so they're a premium target for marketing too. But yeah.
It's very cool. And the one reason I really just wanted to interview was I wanted to ask these questions and just genuinely hear your answers to it. But I want to bring more attention to it, because I belong to a couple of industrial heritage communities, and most of them is about really large, almost unattainable for the average person type of industrial projects, like a big dam or something of that nature. But to have a factory that you bought for 20 grand, and just as an individual, and taking it through the process of from being uninhabitable and not zoned to have people in there, to the goal and the vision that you have, I just think is such an awesome story. So I just want to bring attention to you and your channel, and encourage people to check it out.
To that point, I had a video on my channel which was like just trying to show people that the Midwest is full of these buildings that you can buy for a song, if you have the resources or the iron will to take one on. There's an industrial town called Decatur, Illinois. It's about a half an hour away, 40 minutes. They're super industrial, and they just have empty buildings everywhere, and they're just sitting empty, and the owners are just paying property tax on them, and nothing is happening with them. And so people on the channel, they're always commenting like, "Oh, I wish I could buy something like that for 20K." Well, you can. They are everywhere in Illinois. I think the trick is just trying to get one that doesn't have roof problems. That's the.
Yeah, because that's a pitched roof too, isn't it?
Well, it had the original flat mop down tar roof, but the previous owner put a pitched metal roof new on it. And so the problem is that the building's 50 feet wide, but those roofing sheet metal pieces, they're like 20 feet. So there's a seam going down the entire building. What's happened is water's kind of got in that seam and then rotted out a lot of the purlins. So like if you step on it, then it makes a big gap. So I need to pull that up and replace all those boards and screw it all back down. And but I had a whole bunch of roofing guys reach out, say they could help me do it. So
that's so cool.
Positive ending.
So if people wanted to, so I definitely want to recommend everybody go and check out your channel because it's must follow in my opinion. If outside of that, how can people support you? If the average person probably isn't close enough to Charleston to actually physically help, but anything that they can do if they just want to support this project.
They can subscribe to my channel. That would be the first thing. But if they, one of the greatest thing about the whole journey is, and especially through YouTube, is that like the comment section gives so many helpful tips. Like for example, I was putting in windows and kids are knocking windows out left and right with rocks. And the further I get along, the better it starts looking, the less of a problem it is. But several of the windows that I was replacing were like frosted. And so I went to the Walmart and I got like glass frosting and it just wasn't working because on the outside, you could kind of see the marks, but if you frosted on the inside, it would, the side facing out would reflect and it just looked horrible. And one of the guys commented in the section, just take that plastic that you're putting in the Lexan or whatever and do a palm sander on it for about 45 seconds. It'll be a perfect frosted window. And I did it and it was perfect. Like I looked at so many different options of how to do that. And those kind of stories are just countless. So I would say if they want to support, get on, watch it. If you see something that you can recommend or a nice tip, put it in the comment section and I'll read it and hopefully it'll help me get a little bit further down the road.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Well, Chris, I know it's late for you in Poland. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, especially knowing how many messages and things you're getting after that last video that you put out. So I really do appreciate you accepting the invitation to come on.
I saw that you have like an industrial real estate channel. I love industrial real estate now. It's a newfound hobby. So I had to jump at that chance.
Oh, it was meant to be. If it's okay with you, I'd love to reach out in 6 months or a year, and perhaps we could do part 2 of this and see how things are.
Oh, that'd be fun. You guys could hold my feet to the fire. Did I actually get any further down the road?
Well, you can bet that if I'm ever in the area, and I don't know if I'll ever be in central Illinois, but if I'm even somewhat close to it, I'd love to see this building in person. So
when people walk in after watching the channel, they're like, this thing looked gigantic on the channel, but I had no idea because it just doesn't present. So like if you do and you stop in, it'll leave a mark on you. It'll impress you, I think.
I'm gonna add that to my list of things to do. So, well, Chris, thank you once again. I'd encourage everybody to check out your YouTube channel and subscribe. And you've got a loyal fan in me. I'm going to be following along and watching this journey progress as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So thank you. It was really neat for me. It's a first experience I had on a podcast. So it was pretty awesome. So thank you.
I hope you do more because it's you've got an awesome story to tell. And I have a feeling as much success as you've had just in the last few days, it's going to continue growing at an even bigger pace because I think it's just an awesome story. So well done. Thank you once again for sharing the time with me.
Thank you.
American made in Charleston's care with every pair. The pride was there, old bones of the factory standing strong. Through every boot and shoe there